It is the Everton Byline here at the Bridewell in person. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're listening to us, no change really, but Paddy Boylan joins me. Paddy, how are you? Fresh from Ipswich. You'll tell me some tales about your journey back. Do you want to elaborate for people?
Yeah, I need to be careful here because I don't want to be given the unfair tag of kind of moaner in chief.
But you are.
After last week's podcast. I won't dwell too much on the trip back from Ipswich, but it was a long one back on Sunday. Highlights were lack of trains between Liverpool and London, and a rail replacement bus from Crewe to Liverpool, and then the person next to me on the rail replacement bus from Crewe throwing up all over himself and on me. So that was about 5 or 6 hours into the journey. So that was probably a low point, not only in the weekend but also just like in life.
I mean, and you said there were NFL fans on there as well, which is obviously maybe even worse for you as somebody who hates that sport. So
yeah, I mean that was between Ipswich and London, so there must have been an NFL game over the weekend between two teams I've never heard of. You'll know more about that.
Yeah, there was a game on this weekend. Yeah, I researched after your message. But
was it Jacksonville maybe?
Yeah, I think them against the Patriots. I think. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I said we are on the Bridewell. Do come and check it out this weekend. They will have the game on Saturday afternoon, of course. You've got somewhere to watch it, as well as the Denby. And just one other thing to mention, we got down to the launch of the Pen Factory, didn't we, on Thursday? Great new gaff. Not one to watch your sports up, but certainly if you want to go to the theatre, I know you're a cultured man, aren't you, Paddy? If you're up that way around Hope Street, it's well worth checking out.
Great beer garden.
Superb, yeah.
Great beer garden.
Great tap selection as well. The steady rolling man there. You want to play football after a couple of pints as well?
I did after we went to the soft launch, which was again that was an interesting evening. Even after a few pints of steady rolling, man, it was playing football. But no, it was good. Enjoyed it. Great venue, I think, in general. Like I say, lovely on a summer's day when you can get out in that beer garden on Hope Street. I just think in general that's a great part of town as well.
Yeah, 100%. As ever, do hit like, do hit subscribe, and do leave a comment if you watch us on YouTube. Also, listen to us. Do leave us a rating, do leave us a review. They all help. After the win, I'm sure everyone's still in a good mood by the time this comes out on Monday evening or Tuesday morning. And just one other thing to get into as well. You're looking to get to the game on Saturday. Guinness have very kindly donated a couple of tickets to that match, courtesy of the Bridewell. So if you want to have a chance of getting down to Goodison Park to watch the Blues, the Informed Blues take on Fulham this weekend. Do retweet the post on Twitter that this podcast goes out on. Do follow the Blue Room, do follow the Bridewell as well, and you'll be going into the draw for that as well. So retweet the post for this. Do follow the Blue Room, do follow the Bridewell, and make sure you receive the ticket by email as well. It's important to stress, as Paddy did there. But yeah, we'll get into our talking points, mate. Loads to get into. Obviously, really good performance at the weekend. We've got to start with Michael Keane, haven't we? Obviously, I've just loved the clips and the TikToks that have sort of followed in the aftermath of his goal at the weekend of his goal compilation for Everton, and some of them you forget like how good they are, and it wasn't the finish of a centre half who just steps forward and blasts it like Alan Stubbs does. It wasn't the finish of a centre half who comes forward for a corner and just gets it a head on something and it goes in, a la Harry Maguire does at times for Man United in England. It was a cultured finish that you'd see from a centre forward, really, wasn't it? I think that's what's really impressive about a lot of his goals for me. They're not standard meathead centre half goals. They are nuanced. There is clever movement. There is great touch. There is great technique. And that one, the weekend's one of the best he scored for us, and just another example of how good he is and how lethal he is in front of goal.
Yeah, I think it has to be one of his best for Everton. I really like the one against Crystal Palace. That sparked that amazing comeback a few years ago under Lampard. And again, that was with his left foot. So he's not just doing it with his stronger foot, he's doing it with both. And this was a different kind of finish, obviously. It was kind of hitting to the roof of the net. And you can tell that he's rated by other members of the team and members of staff. Dice spoke about him being a great finisher afterwards. But you can also tell from speaking to him that he's thinking about finishing and how to go about things. So, I mean, we spoke to him after the game in the tunnel. One of the things he was saying was that he knew that if he from that angle, if he hit it into the roof of the net, the keeper would have less of a chance of getting to it. And all the focus from his side is on not just whacking the ball, but on setting himself properly, making sure that he gets a proper connection. And it's interesting to delve into his backstory a little bit, because I know there's quite a lot of shouts now for him to play further forward up the pitch.
Yeah.
He was telling us in the mix zone afterwards, he started as a goal scorer and central midfielder in Manchester United's youth ranks before he was converted to a centre back. But he was asked by another reporter, not me, I should stress, whether he'd ever had thoughts about playing as a striker, and he said no. He said that although it was something that he'd probably enjoy as a one-off, it's a difficult position. It's not just about finishing, and I'm sure we'll speak about that later, but he said he couldn't do, for example, what Dominic Calvert-Lewin can do in terms of the running, the hold-up play, everything that goes into the all-round game. But no, just a great moment for him. And I mean, I was watching the scenes at the end. We were sat opposite the Everton fans, 3,000 Everton fans in the stadium at Portman Road, watching the game on Saturday. Full time, and you've got 3,000 singing Keno. And I was like, if somebody had told me this was going to happen even 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have believed them.
Ashley Young high-fiving the fans. I've seen that picture doing the rounds as well.
So it's like a bit of like a rehabilitation story for a couple of the guys who have been maligned at times. And I mean, I think that's been one of the most pleasing things from the last few weeks. Not only the improvement in fortunes and the positive record, getting the first win on the road in, I think, 10 months since Burnley last December. But just the way that they have been stretched, and the players that have come in, the squad players like Young and Keane, have made a difference. I think Ashley Young's been great now for probably 3 or 4 weeks. Again, great. I mean, there was a moment in the second half where he's running from the touchline closest to us, kind of we're directly above him, and he's outpacing guys that are kind of 10, 15 years younger than him. How's this even happening for a 39-year-old? But yeah, he was great. Michael Keane was great. And a much better performance in general, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's interesting on Keane. You know, you spoke to him in the mix zone there, and we've spoken before about what that is, where players effectively come through, don't they? And they get asked, can we have a few words? Do you want to chat about it? I think we said in the past, Tarkowski's the one who tends to step up.
He's the mix zone champion.
Yeah, when we've had a bad result typically, or Jordan Pickford's obviously done it a few times as well, hasn't he? But I think Keane as well, when he's been in the team, when things haven't gone well, has kind of been somebody who's always been willing to come out and speak, hasn't he? And I think, like, I sort of spoke a little bit about this on the post-match at the weekend, but I think that's why I think there was probably wasn't a surprise to me that after the Crystal Palace win, when Branthwaite came back and it did very well, the manager name-checked Keane, because for all the cliches, and listen, he's not the answer to Everton going forward. This is not us doing a rallying cry to get him a new contract at all, but he is that classic good lad to have around. It seems like someone who will front up, someone who, despite the criticism that he's received for a lot of it's been justified as well, to be fair, but the criticism he's received for his play over the years doesn't seem to have been stung by that, or his relationship with the supporters or the rest of the squad has been soured by that. You mentioned the scenes at the end there of him going over and really loving it, and the supporters singing his name back. It could have easily gone a different way, couldn't it? I suppose is what I'm saying, because there has been times where you've been in the boozer, or you've been in the press box and you've seen his name on the team sheet, and everyone's kind of going, again, because bad things just seem to happen to them, don't they? But despite all that, he keeps coming forward, he keeps putting himself out there. He's happy to speak to the media and front up, and it's just nice that in this instance it's him coming forward, speaking positively about his performance, positively about his goal, and having that moment with the away fans as well, because it's not all been nice, has it, down the years, and it could have easily got could have definitely gone a different way.
Yeah, and I think it's in the interest of balance, it's worth pointing out that even a couple of weeks ago on this show, we were speaking about the supposed kind of incompatibility long term of a Keane and Tarkowski partnership, and how, because they're both so similar and they've got the same flaws, they seem to be exacerbated whenever they face like pacey, tricky attacks full of movement. I mean, thinking about Aston Villa, who just ran rings around them, but obviously various others, Tottenham, and and Brighton as well. And those points still stand. And Keane is still one of the highest earners of the club, someone who's still coming to the end of his contract. But I do think he's a popular figure. He is articulate when he speaks to us as well, for what that's worth. And obviously that comes secondary by a long way to his actual footballing ability. But one of the things I was really keen to ask Dyche afterwards was why he places so much trust and faith in Michael Keane. I mean, we've had supporters throughout the season questioning why, even with Jared Branthwaite out, Jake O'Brien hasn't been given an opportunity. And Dyche comes back to the same point, I feel. I mean, first of all, he backs him to the hilt. So I think for the second or third time in basically a matter of weeks, he mentioned how Keane has had his fair share of detractors and he's has kind of had to deal with that and come through that. He mentioned the dead leg that he played with against Leicester City. And the fact that maybe some other professionals wouldn't have soldiered through to play for the cause there when the rest of the squad is stretched. And he also mentioned kind of his ability to train and put together regular runs and want to help the cause. So all that obviously goes in his favour with Dyche. And I think Dyche is one of those managers who takes very firm views of things. Yeah. And it's hard to shake him from those opinions. So Michael Keane, there's a tick in his box for Dyche, and it's probably hard for that view to shift substantially. And that's not always a positive, by the way. But I think in this case, what it's done is it's given, at the very least, it's given Keane the confidence to put back-to-back games together. And I'd argue this is his best run in an Everton jersey for some time, probably since the Ancelotti era where he played so regularly with Yerry Mina. That's no surprise to me. You would expect that from a manager he's known since his time at Burnley. And it's not just about his attacking too. I mean, you look at his defensive work. I thought they were much, much better as a partnership against Liam Delap, who is a bit of a bull in a china shop, kind of going around kicking players and jumping into them. But they dealt, that's what they want. They dealt with that physical threat really quite well.
That's what they should be their bread and butter. Yeah. Like I was quite interested to watch that Delap because I thought he looked really good so far this season, but that was entirely based on highlights, to be honest. But he didn't look much good watching it for 90 minutes. But just one other thing I wanted to say on Keane that you mentioned there about the dead leg, obviously at Leicester. I think that's probably something that's kind of gone under the radar a bit with him, in the sense that if you look back through his Everton career, he has been someone who has been willing to really play through the pain barrier for us. And again, you know, they get paid a lot of money, all these sorts of things. They should be willing to do that, but not all players do. Not everyone would play. You know, as Les always says, always jokes about his size 14 boot. You know, when he had that really bad foot injury for a time. There's a spell I remember after the game against was it Bournemouth where he had a fractured skull and he played with a headband.
So that was Bournemouth. Yeah,
he played with a headband for a bit, didn't he? As well. So. You know, this I think he obviously spoke as well about the mental side as well, I think, and some of the struggles he's had there. So this is a lad who's been through the ringer properly in terms of physically, mentally, his relationship with the supporters, and let's be honest, he's more than likely going to leave at the end of the season, and I don't think everyone's going to be clamouring for him to stay. But it would just be nice if there was a nice ending to this, because he's been at the football club for
this is eighth season
now, so. It would be nice if there was a nice end to all this. And listen, there might be a situation where on Saturday he's off the team again, but you feel like there'll be times where he's going to be called up on again this season. Maybe he's an emergency striker, who knows? But
I wouldn't be that surprised. And I know they mention it at Everton. They say if we need that option, then he can go and do it, because he is regarded in such kind of stellar terms as a finisher.
On Saturday, be even better on the bench if you can bring one on. You're chasing a goal in the last 10 minutes to play up front.
I mean, what I would say is if I wanted the ball to fall in the box to one of those two right now, then it would be Michael Keane.
Absolutely.
And there was a funny moment in I think it was the first half at Portman Road, where Everton get a free kick outside the box, kind of right of centre, and Dwight McNeil and Ashley Young are over it. Young eventually takes, which I actually think is the wrong decision from the angle. I'd love to have seen McNeil strike it on his left foot, but you got the away fans nearby chanting Keno to take it, and I wrote in my match piece that was only kind of half in jest, because he is a good striker of the ball. Look, I mean, it's clear he's he's a popular lad, and again, for what that's worth, we're doing the interview, and I think Asmir Begovic comes through at one point and kind of ruffles his head and says scored another goal, have we? Back in front of the media. Troy Dean, he was there, I think, doing some form of punditry, giving him a big thumbs up as he's leaving the tunnel and that kind of stuff. And I think people are just genuinely quite pleased for him. It's turned out this way. That's not to say it will continue that way. And I think Jared Branthwaite's a shoe-in whenever he's fully fit. But I asked Dyche about the decision not to even include Branthwaite in the squad at the weekend, and he'd said it was his decision, not due to any injury or setback or anything like that, but he felt that he should stay on Merseyside. He was doing fitness work and wanted to give him another week because they felt that he was on the cusp. When they brought him back last time, Dyche now feels as though that might have been slightly too soon, he was saying in the press conference, and they want him to just have another week of full training so he can be ready to come back and play regular games, and that's the hope. We all want to see Jared Branthwaite back fit in the Everton team, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's the last thing for Keane to conquer, isn't it? Really, just become an Alan Stubbs free kick specialist, just run up and lever it.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it even just once.
Why not? Yeah, next time you get one like on the edge of the box, like just someone like shift it and Keane runs up and smashes it.
You might just take somebody's head off in the park end there. Take Mosey's head off.
But like it's just like the final thing I'll say on this before we move on is like the one thing about Keane. I was thinking about this on the way in. Like for all the times he gets forward and gets in the box and is called upon to be like emergency striker in that sense at the end of games. I can't really remember him ever missing like a sitter.
No.
Like I can't think of like a big chance where like the ball's dropped to him and he's like skewed it wide or like a header which has gone over or like. And I think like that in itself is really impressive because it's not his, well maybe it is his natural environment, I don't know, but like he doesn't really seem to skew like chances. Yeah. The goal he scored against Bournemouth earlier in the season, obviously it's been forgotten because of what happened afterwards, but Calvert-Lewin gets it to him. There's time, and how often, we're going to talk about this now with the player we're going to come and speak about next, but how often do the players get too much time? Do they seem to overthink it and mess up the chance? On that occasion, it was just like it dropped to him. It's almost like he had a deep breath and just lashed it across the keeper, very, very calm and composed. So, yeah, he's doing really well at the moment, and let's hope his goal scoring form continues from that point of view. From a natural goal scorer onto a not so natural goal scorer, you could say. Our number 9, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Interested in this, and I'm glad we're going to sort of delve a little bit deeper into it because I saw a lot at the weekend of Calvert-Lewin missed 2 one-on-ones, awful, championship level strike, all that kind of stuff. And then I saw the other side of it where I saw a lot of people praise his performance and sort of suggest that he played really well and obviously gave their centre-backs to run around a little bit. So just wanted to speak a bit about Dom because he had the 2 games, didn't he, earlier on, Bournemouth and Villa. Obviously scored both goals, both second goals for us in going 2-0 up, and again been forgotten about largely because of what happened afterwards. And it looked like he was going to maybe start the season quite well and come on a bit after the transfer window had closed and all the uncertainty about his future had finished. But not found the back of the net in the last few weeks. But I think he's playing well still. But it's that balancing act, isn't it, of when you're a centre forward, like what offsets playing well. Like if you do the hold-up play well, if you run the channels well, if you win loads of aerial duels well, if you knock their centre-backs everywhere and cause a bit of chaos from that point of view, but you miss 2 one-on-ones, do you go back down to there and below that threshold of playing well? But I think where I'm sort of at with it now, and obviously be interested to get your thoughts, is that if you go back a year, 18 months ago, and think of the position he was in, where he couldn't stay fit, where we had to really monitor his minutes, where maybe there's a bit of indecision on his point about going into battles and really putting himself in for challenges. Yeah. Certainly after that cheek injury he got at Villa early last season, and when he came back after that, and maybe wasn't quite as combative a player. I'm relatively happy with where he is. I think he's given us a good focal point. I think he's having a positive impact on the team. But the one-on-ones are undoubtedly an issue. But I think at the moment he's definitely a net positive for us as opposed to a striker who's missed loads of chances and having a negative impact on the team.
Yeah, I thought it was quite telling that Everton go 2-0 up in this game, but you still don't see Beto, whereas you did in some of those earlier games that they ended up losing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably because Dyche feels as though he knows what he's going to get with Calvert-Lewin, and he was leading the line effectively. And I mean, what I mean by leading the line, and I'm not necessarily talking about his finishing there, but I'm talking about his hold-up play, his ability to run the channels, occupy defenders, all that kind of stuff. I still think there's a massive gulf in quality between Calvert-Lewin and Beto in those areas. I mean, I don't think Beto knows what he's going to do himself. Never mind Dyche or the opposition. And obviously, sometimes that can help him. But in these situations, you actually just want to alleviate pressure, hold the ball, do all those things. I think it is a tough gig in this setup because there's a lot of donkey work required. You've got to run the channels, like I said. You at times are fielding a lot of direct balls over your head and trying to, at times, hold off 2 and 3 defenders with not much around you in terms of support. So I think we have to factor all of that in. And to go back to your point about how we assess a centre-forward's performance, I obviously, in live tweeting the game on Saturday, at different points had mentioned both the missed chances, which I felt he should have scored, by the way, and his excellent hold-up play. And I was getting some comments underneath the one about the hold-up play and saying, but yeah, he missed chances. So I got into a little bit of back and forth, and one of the people that had responded had said, like, that's the bread and butter of a Premier League striker. And I said, well, yeah, I kind of agree with that. But it's not only that. Like, the days of, like, a Pippo Inzaghi are basically gone now. Just about every manager in the Premier League wants their number 9 to do more than just be in the box. And Calvert-Lewin is having to do a load more than just be in the box. So, I mean, if we take the two elements, is he holding up the ball well and being a focal point for the team? I think yes, emphatically so. Yeah. And I think that was really clear again in the ground, the physicality of it, the ability to ruffle feathers, to run in behind, do all those kind of things that Calvert-Lewin has done so well over the years. Big positive. Finishing, obviously, still leaving quite a bit to be desired. And I think it's a particular kind of finish in this case. I mean, I messaged you earlier on WhatsApp, didn't I? And said, I've got a list of one-on-ones that he's missed. And we between us came up with 4 or 5 over the last season to 6 months. And you don't really fancy him at the moment when he's going through in those situations.
I don't think he ever have in his Everton career. Like, I can only think of one he scored, and that was at Villa in the Cup at the start of last season, where I think it was Olsen in goal for them, and he just sort of gives him the eyes and rolls it.
That doesn't count. Like, Robin Olsen goes down in stages, like a sack of spuds. Do you remember Scott McTominay's goal for Man United against Everton?
Yeah.
It's like, it almost doesn't count. I mean, that's a bit harsh on Calvert-Lewin, but
it's weird, isn't it? Because I almost think like Calvert-Lewin's like trademark finish is where he just puts himself in a place for the ball to hit him, and it goes in.
I think of the finishes in his best season at Everton under Carlo Ancelotti were effectively when the ball was getting slid across the front of the goal. He was in the 6-yard box and he was there at the back post.
He's like horizontal every time. Like, I reckon if you look back at that season, about half of his goals would be when he's on the slide. Yeah. Like I'm getting onto the cross or getting onto the end of a ball to the back post, or like a diving header or something like that.
Or towering over somebody at the back post. Yeah. I mean, I saw his goal the other day from the COVID derby at Goodison, where I can't remember who it was. It might have even been Virgil van Dijk. He's just climbing all over
it's
him
Robertson, isn't
at the back post.
Van Dijk had got off there, hadn't he?
From a Luke, of course, yeah. Not to open that can of worms again. And he's so powerful, so prodigious in his leap, and he just sends Luca Dean's header back across goal into the Gladys Street net. So I think there is 2 stock finishes, if you will. And obviously, occasionally he'll do something like the goal against West Ham last season, which was a great turn and finish on the edge of the box. But I think he's more hit and miss when it comes to that. And almost the further you get away from goal, as with any striker, I suppose, but particularly Calvert-Lewin, the further away you get from goal, the less you kind of you fancy him. And particularly in these one-on-one scenarios, I mean, I do wonder now how much of this is not just technical, but it's also mental, in the sense that sometimes you go through and you feel like you're going to score and you score as a result. It's like it's a visualization thing. But here, is he going through expecting to score now? I don't know. He seems like hesitant and.
Well, again, like I said this on the instant reaction at the weekend, like it sort of feels like he's tried everything with them as well. Like there's two at Villa, wasn't there? So one, he tries to go around the keeper. That's when we're 2-1.
Yeah,
and
that's too slow in doing that.
And that didn't work. Then he tries to go high, like Keane did for his goal at the weekend. That hits the bar, so that didn't work. And then the first one at the weekend, I think he tries to give the keeper the eyes, doesn't it? Sort of put it, he doesn't whip it Henry-ish into the corner. He tries to cut it back. And
that reminded me of the one, I think it was last season against Aston Villa, where he went through on goal, where Martinez saw him doing that, but left out the leg.
Yeah. Well, that's what he did in the Ulster side against Olsen, wasn't it? In that game, he sort of gave him the eyes and rolled it that way. And then the second one, I think the second one at the weekend, he should think it. Like, because he's on the angle, Muric is rushing out, and I think if you just go through the shot and then just dig your foot under the ball, the keeper's reaction, and you go down. So, but it's one of those things now, isn't it, where he's been doing this for so long. And I remember even like the season when he was scoring goals and playing really well, there was criticism of him then for not being very good at one-on-ones. But I think what he's having to do now, and you mentioned the goal he scored in the COVID derby there, and the supply line was from Luca Dean. Yeah. How often now does an Everton player get to the byline on their strong foot and dig out across to the back post that he can either tower up and head, like we said, like for a goal like that, or it's fizzed across the box between the goalkeeper and the defender in that channel, and he just slides in and taps it in. Like I can't remember the last time he's had an opportunity like that for a long time. And this isn't me like excusing everything, because I think he's obviously got to get better at certain aspects and adapt to the team. But if you look at what he's being asked to do now in this team compared to what he was being asked to do in that best season he had, it's completely different. You mentioned Inzaghi there, and Ancelotti said, didn't he? He wants them to watch videos of Inzaghi and stay between the width of the goalpost and just be that player. Now he's got to charge the ball into the corner when we hoof it long. He's got to hold it up with 3 or 4 players around him. And I think doing those sorts of things take a bit of a toll on you throughout the game as well, don't you? It's like being in a boxing match and getting jab to the body. It's money in the bank, isn't it? And eventually, as the fight goes on, you start to feel it more. And I imagine for Calvert-Lewin, if you've got to run into the channel more times, if you've got to take more knocks, if you've got to hold the ball up and battle and do that sort of thing, then it's going to dullen your sharpness in front of goal a little bit as well, isn't it?
It's like those video games where you've got the power bar.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And by the time he goes through on goal, the power bar's basically right at the end. It's basically empty. And
so just one other thing I just thought of there, like on this point. When was the last time you would have played 4 games back to back, like 90 minutes, full 90? Because, like you said, in a lot of times he's been brought off late on, was chasing a goal or something else for better or whoever. It must have been a long time for him. This was, someone might be able to correct me, this must be his longest run for a long time, playing 90-minute matches consecutively.
I mean, possibly, and I think actually ideally you would like that dependable option on the bench to come on and alleviate some of that strain. It is, as we said, it is a tough role to play, and you are expending a lot of energy. That's why it's a shame that Beto seemingly is not in that position right now, and more an indictment on him, really, I think, than anything else there. Beto, that is. Just going back to the point about what we require from a modern striker, it's goals and it's the hold-up play, but in general, it's not one or the other. If that makes sense, you kind of need to do a bit of everything. The funny thing is, if you score 10, 15 goals in the Premier League and do what Calvert-Lewin does in terms of hold-up play, then contract notwithstanding, you're a 60, 70 million pound striker. That's how much those guys cost in the market. They're worth an absolute premium.
Look at Solanke, he's probably the best example of that now, isn't he? 60 million he went for.
60 odd million, and I mean, in reality, is Dominic Solanke a 60 million pound striker? He probably isn't. I think Spurs probably overpaid, but that's the bar. That's an example of what can be achieved in the market with players like Calvert-Lewin. Now, unfortunately, Everton aren't in the situation where they could even get that kind of fee for Calvert-Lewin, because he's into the final year of his deal and in theory could sign a pre-contract with a foreign club from January. But he is, as it stands, he is working for the team. He is bringing stuff to the table. he is still a much better option when fit, in my opinion, than Beto. There's just, as we say, there's some stuff there in his game, and particularly the one-on-ones, but some of the other finishing. When he has a bit more time to think, I think
Definitely.
When he's instinctive, he tends to be...
Not like Keane, but...
Keane gives himself time to think.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying to us afterwards. He thinks about setting himself. He thinks about making a secure connection with the ball. He thinks about where to place it. So I thought it was amazing that he was talking to us about how he was thinking, if I put this into the roof of the net, the keeper's not going to be able to get there. And I don't know if Calvert-Lewin's do that. I couldn't tell you in truth, but that's effectively what's required.
I'd love to speak to like a striker about this, like a Premier League forward. Like, so I always remember like the player I always used to be when I was in the garden when I was a kid playing footy was Ian Wright, because I used to think he was amazing at one. I used to score against Everton all the time, but I always pretended I was Ian Wright. I was running down the garden and just trying to score goals past my dad one-on-one, because I used to think Ian Wright was lethal in that situation. But I just love to know like the thought process of like what goes through the head in those 4 or 5 seconds when they've got the goalkeeper in the sights and they can make their mind up and they can think about which way they're going to go. But
do you not think? I mean, I was from where I was in the stadium. He goes through for the first one, and I'm almost from his body position. I'm almost wondering if he's going to take it to Murich's left.
Yeah.
And I think if he does that, he probably actually stands more a chance of scoring in that situation. But I don't know. It's kind of old news now, isn't it? We move on. I still think he's bringing a lot to the table.
Just quickly on, obviously there's been no real talk about his contract or anything since the window shut. Do you think there's anything on that? Do you think there's any kind of pressure to get something sorted from Everton's perspective? Because obviously we know they offered him the deal, but it's still unsigned. There's been no real talk about him moving on. There's been some reports recently about maybe Juventus coming in for him. There's much truth to that at all, but it's still just not sorted, is it? Which is not ideal. And the centre forward situation is quite interesting, isn't it? Because you've got Beto, who's not getting a look in now, Breuer, who's here on loan, who we could buy, but is coming back off a big injury. Chimiti,
injured,
promising, but still not scored a Premier League goal, still injured. It feels like there could be a situation where none of those 4, well, maybe Chimiti aside, but 3 of those 4 could not even be here next year.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's there enough for grabs, isn't it? I mean, particularly for Beto and Chimiti, you'd say. I mean, I think Everton do want to get this resolved and have been trying to get this resolved for some time, and that's why they offered the terms at the start of the summer, and they made it known that they wanted to keep him. I think they will continue their efforts, from what I hear, to try and convince him to stay. But the ball, to an extent, is in Calvert-Lewin's court. He's the one that says yes or no. Yeah. And so far, he's shown no sign, no inclination of wanting to sign again on the dotted line. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? I mean, Calvert-Lewin's had his injury problems. He's out of contract at the end of the season. And it's an interesting place for him to be. He's going to... At some point, you would imagine he's going to want some job security. He's going to want the idea that whether it's Everton or somewhere else, he's going to want that contract, and he's going to need to know that that's there for him. I mean, I would say, given his age and everything else, he's got one big contract left in him, whether it's here or elsewhere, and he's going to have to get that right. But running down the deal only works if you've got something lined up. I mean, for argument's sake, and I really, really hope this doesn't happen, but if he runs it down until the summer but picks up an injury, let's say for argument's sake in March, that rules him out for 6 months. He runs the risk of being without a deal then for the first half or the next season in its entirety, and that's a bad place to be in. So I do think he's probably more in control than Everton in this situation. But it's not 100% zero. I think it's probably only 60-40 given what else is going on. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I suppose he's kind of a bit of a hostage to his own form in that sense. If he goes on another goalless run, then his options are going to dwindle massively. If he starts scoring goals, he's going to get more options. So, yeah, one to keep an eye on, but I still think he's just above the playing well threshold for me. Anyway, it'd be good to see.
He's still worth his place.
Yeah, oh God, yeah, without doubt. Just to finish off, Paddy, this week, wanted to quickly touch upon the Graeme Sharp interview. We're going to just do something little on this, and Dave and Les are going to do a bit more of a deep dive into it on Blue Monday, but just thought we'd touch upon it. Obviously, bit of a sort of online movement last week about trying to get him back to Goodison, and obviously a little bit sour how things ended, wasn't it, with the stuff around the headlock and the interview that he gave to the Mirror the day afterwards. Obviously not been back to Goodison since. There was a bit of a push to maybe get him back to Goodison Park, and then he's done an interview with the Scotsman, Alan Paciullo, sort of suggesting that he's not fussed, and the love for the football club is gone. He said he felt the stick that he and the board got were. He said he felt the stick that he got, not the board necessarily, was unfair in this instance. And it just sounds like he's had enough of it, really. And I suppose from our point of view, we are not old enough to have seen him play or experienced the goals he scored for Everton and the joy he brought to the generation before us. So maybe things are a little bit different from our point of view, and that same connection isn't quite there. But it still feels quite sad the way this has all kind of ended, and the way in which he's kind of signed that interview off as the love has gone for a football club he played for so many years and scored so many goals for and so many trophies for is disappointing. And I put on Twitter myself yesterday, I feel like it's a bit of a byproduct of the toxic leadership we've had at the top of the football club for so long. But in doing that interview as well, it feels like Sharpie has burned any remaining vestiges of a bridge that might have been left.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the point about leadership, if you're going to make the argument that he was, in essence, collateral there, then it only stands up if he stays silent or he's not giving interviews like the one he did on the weekend to the Scotsman. I mean, the first thing to say here is it is deeply regretful. I mean, I grew up in an Evertonian household, regaled of stories of Sharp by my dad, my granddad. He was a hero to them, and from what I've seen and from what I've been told, a complete forward in the 1980s. Often, actually, when Calvert-Lewin was at his best, people would make comparisons between the two in terms of speed and physicality and ability in the air, all those kind of things. Obviously, Sharp at a higher level and winning trophies. So it's sad to see how this has turned out. I do think there probably was a way that this could have reached a positive conclusion. But I don't think the interview that was done with the Scotsman necessarily aids his course there.
Oh, definitely not.
I still think there's a load of questions here. I mean, one of the most common things I've seen since is that he actually is not banned from attending Goodison. He's well within his rights to go to a game, but he is choosing not to, and I think that is right. He feels that he's not able to do so for those very specific reasons you've outlined. But he's not really gone into the full story there or given chapter and verse on what happened and why and everything else. And I think I come back to when I read his quotes, my thought was, this isn't going to help the situation. Actually, it probably entrenches the position. It means that he's less likely to be welcomed back with open arms.
Doesn't feel like he's wanted. Like it doesn't feel like he's done that interview with you of
helping.
It feels to me, and I obviously don't know, and we're hoping to get Alan on the podcast to talk about this maybe in a bit more detail next week. But it feels to me as though that interview was maybe done from his point of view, Sharpie, with just drawing a line under all this and saying, just, forget it. I'm not coming back.
Yeah, and I have to be honest, when I saw the interview in the first case, I thought it would be the opposite.
Yeah.
I thought actually it would be an attempt to build those bridges and to come back. And he's obviously still, from what he said, he's obviously still bitter about the way everything played out. And particularly stuff in relation to the board and the criticism they got and some of the stuff over the security advice and everything else. The problem is that quite a lot of that obviously isn't in the public domain and will never ever be printed by the club for obvious reasons. So, I mean, it gets harder and harder to see a way back, and I think that's sad.
We'll leave it there. Anyway, like I said, Dave and Les are going into that in a bit more detail on the Blue Monday podcast today. Obviously, Dave worked with Sharpie for years and years. Les watched them a lot as well. So it'll be fascinating to see what those two have to say about that. So if you're after a bit more Graeme Sharp stuff, do go and check out Blue Monday. That has been The Byline, episode 12 this week here from the Bride, where we are upstairs recording. It is a bit livelier downstairs. We just escaped to keep it quiet. Like I said as well, if you're up for going to the Fulham game at the weekend, do retweet the Twitter post of this podcast. Do follow the Blue Room. Do follow the Bride. Well, you have a chance of getting to that, which should be an interesting game under the lights at 5:30 on Saturday. If you watch us on YouTube, do leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought, particularly on Dom. I think that's a really interesting one and where he's at the moment, and anything else we've spoken about. Hit like, hit subscribe. If you're listening to us on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere else, do leave us a rating. Do leave us a review and let us know what you think of the show. So that's it for episode 12. Episode 13 will be with you next Tuesday. Cheers to Paddy as ever. Up the toffees, and we'll catch you again very soon.